Okay, we definitely have a quorum, if not more. Okay, well, this evening, I will call this meeting to order. Good evening. It is about 7:05, and this is a meeting of the City of Urbana's Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, and we will start with a roll call, and maybe we'll actually do like roll call and introductions all in one if we can. And if we want to start with Barb, on this end, you can just introduce yourself and whether you're a member of the commission or staff, and everybody could maybe say where they're from, and for the people who are here as proxies, who you're here in place of this month, and welcome aboard. So,
not real familiar. I'm Barb Steele. I am acting recording secretary. I'm from the Public Works Department, so I'm staff.
I am Andy Russo. I'm the Athletics and Wellness Manager at the Urbana Park District, and I am sitting in this month for Elsie Hedgespeth, Fitness and Wellness Coordinator.
I'm Audrey Ishii, City of Urbana.
I'm Craig Schunkweiler, Assistant City Engineer for the City of Urbana, and also a member of BPAC.
I'm Cynthia Hoyle. I'm a transportation planner and consultant. I work with MTD and Alta Planning and Design, and I also chair our local Safe Routes to School committee.
Hi, I'm James Radel. I represent the university in the place of Stacey Lorenzo.
welcome, great. I'm Brandon. I'm the chair of the commission.
I'm Sue Jones, and I'm on the board of the League of Illinois Bicyclists, as well as being a member of this commission.
I'm Kevin Garcia, and besides feeling alone over here, I'm a city planner here at Urbana, and I'm the Community Development Department's liaison to BPAC.
Great. Well, welcome everybody this evening. And I know there's also a few audience members who filled out the yellow cards that they would like to speak during public input, to speak to the commission, which is excellent. If anybody else who showed up would like to also speak, there's these yellow cards either over here, Barb's got some, or perhaps on the table on the way in. Okay, at the back table on the way in. So in just a minute, we'll have public input and let everybody who filled out a card come up and speak to the commission. We do have a quorum, so we're going to proceed ahead tonight. The first thing we do is approval of the agenda. So we sent out an agenda in advance. Hopefully everybody got it, as well as the minutes of our last meeting. And if everybody's okay with the agenda as it was submitted, then let's have a quick motion to approve the agenda. So we'll proceed tonight. Does somebody want to make a motion to?
I move to approve the agenda.
Okay.
I'll second.
A motion by Sue and second by Craig. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Anyone opposed? Okay. The ayes have it. We will proceed with the agenda as planned. The item number 3 here, the next thing up, is approval of minutes from the last meeting. They went out, and hopefully folks were able to review them. Does anyone have any corrections for the minutes?
I'm just wondering if on page 2 where it says Susan Johnson expressed concern about pedestrians, if that was in fact me. And I'm pretty sure it was.
Okay.
Hey, it's not often Jones gets misspelled.
Yeah. If you agree with what Susan Johnson said, then
I agree.
we'll
so
attribute
I want credit for it.
Yeah, we'll attribute it to you.
I don't think she was really here.
Any other corrections?
Yeah, on page 1, under 5A, we previously thought the public meeting was going to be the September 14th. Maybe within the parentheses, since that meeting, it changed. Then we can also have the date being September 17th. And then on page 3, under item B there, 5B, first paragraph, I would like to change from, he added that the mayor had expressed an interest in expanding the existing sidewalk snow removal program to include more businesses in the areas where sidewalk snow removal is required by ordinance. I'd like to change that to, he added that the existing sidewalk snow removal program could be expanded to include more businesses in the area where sidewalk snow removal ordinance was required by, or snow removal was required by ordinance. I just want to remove the reference to that the mayor. It was really me speaking, not the mayor.
That's fair. Sounds good to me.
And Barb, I can give you my notes here.
Okay. Any other corrections? Okay, so we have these 2 corrections about Sue's name, 3 corrections. Sue's name, adding information on page 1 about the meeting location, and on page 3, clarifying Craig's comments. Any others? Okay, then a motion would be in order. If somebody wants to make a motion to approve the minutes with all those 3, amendments, that'd be great.
So moved.
Okay, a motion by Cynthia. Is there a second by Sue? Any final thoughts? Okay, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you all. The minutes are approved. And so next up tonight, we have public input. A couple people did submit yellow cards. If anybody else is here to speak, please grab one and fill it out, and you can pass it to Barb here on the right. But I will just call on people in the order that they were received. And the basic rules of public input, we'd love you to speak on any topic relevant to bike, pedestrian safety for up to 5 minutes. And you are also on TV and recorded, as well as getting to speak here to the commission and help and share your perspective with us. So first I'll call Daniela Birch. Daniela, okay, if you'd like to come up and do public input first.
Yeah, we'd like to speak to that.
As a group? Yeah, that's great. Well, come on up, and hopefully we can get you enough chairs at this table here that has a microphone. Okay, great. And we'd love for you to each tell us your name and briefly introduce yourself, and then share your thoughts.
My name is John Brents. I'm with Army Board of Cycle Club.
I'm Daniela Birch, and I'm also on the board of
Welcome. Oh yeah, when you talk, make sure you get close enough to the mic so anyone listening at home can follow along too. Well, welcome. Thanks for coming.
We're just here to say that it is the position of the Prairie Cycle Club to not move forward with bike boxes until more research has been done on it.
We've seen a few similar situations, particular that may put cyclists in peril because they would be make them more vulnerable to right hooks. There are situations which should never occur where cyclists is to the right of a right turn lane. If we have a situation very similar to that, to me, it's the worst one in town at the Goodwin and Green intersection, where I have repeatedly seen traffic, automobile and bus traffic, turn in front of the bike in the lane.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want to see that repeated elsewhere. And some of the things that we've seen on the MCOR plan may indicate that.
Mm-hmm. And maybe I'll ask a few questions, then other people too, but tell us a little more. Do you know if the Prairie Cycle Club as a group has had any other group conversations about it, or?
Yes, we just had a board meeting
Okay.
Prior to this meeting.
Okay, great. And are you all aware also of this week's MCOR public meeting? I think it's, okay, great.
Sometime around the noon hour.
Okay, great. Do commission members have any other questions for either Daniela or John about the bike boxes and the
Well,
the
this is
safety?
not an action item for us tonight, so we're not going to be making any recommendations. So in terms of the discussion and decision-making process, the public input meeting, and then I assume we could look at it at a future meeting for a recommendation if we wanted to. But we can record your input, but we can't act on anything
Right.
tonight related to it, just so that you understand how
Yeah,
it's
we
set up.
understand that.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions for John or Daniela? Audrey?
Is that for buses moving north and south that you've seen problems with them cutting in front of,
I've seen
hooking in front of a bicyclist?
I've seen them, buses going south on Goodwin and parallel to bicyclists also going south on Goodwin. They've actually put a trigger there for cyclists on the corner. And that's very, I mean, that puts it in a situation where normally the cyclist would merge into the turning lane, but this actually puts it in a situation where he is to the right of the turn lane, and it puts him in traffic. I have almost every time I've gone south on Goodwin, north of Green, I've seen a near collision.
And describe this a little more, and maybe Craig has the same question too, but describe a little more, okay, so I'm thinking of that intersection. If you're headed south, the scenario is that the bicyclist is in the bike lane,
Right.
a bus or any other large vehicle is in the vehicle lane,
Yeah,
and
I'm
it's,
feeling that buses,
right.
It's a
yeah,
That's
but the motorist, whoever they are, is turning right across that bike lane, even though the bicyclist is intending to just keep heading south on Goodwin, south through straight through the intersection. And it's that particular right hook.
yes.
And if that kind of right hook is problematic, have you all had any discussions as the Prairie Cycle Club about bike boxes? Again, I'm just at the beginning of my kind of learning about this and all the pros and cons, but at least one of my initial thoughts is I was hoping the bike boxes were at times there to prevent this sort of right hook by kind of letting the cyclists all get in a group out in front of the traffic and get through the intersection before the traffic starts cutting them off. And it,
What would be better than a bike box is if there was a right turn lane to the right of where the cyclists line up. Because what happens now, when I come up to that intersection, I see a driver with their right turn signal on, I wait behind the driver. But then all these people on bikes pass me and wait up by the front. So I think there needs to be something to, signal to the drivers that they need to be to the right of the cyclists.
yeah, okay. More questions about that? I saw Craig's hand first and then Cynthia. Craig?
I guess, so I understand your concerns with the bike box, and then you're mentioning the right turn lane. Is there any other suggestions in lieu of the bike box? The issue on the right turn lane is basically lack of physical space to be able to put a right turn lane in. So if we don't have a right turn lane and we don't have a bike box, what is the recommendation then for bicyclists as they approach the intersection?
I don't think that it's not possible. It's just going to take modification of the alma mater club, which is, by most of our, by at least from the university's standpoint, is non-historic.
Right.
So it would take some modification to that intersection. That would, it may cost a little more money, but it's still feasible.
Okay.
I don't even think that much is necessary. You could put sharrows in with where the drivers
Okay.
are.
That's what I
Just to
wondered.
signal to the cyclists that
Yeah.
if they need to go straight, they need to be to the left of where the right turn.
So your suggestion would be to merge, basically, so the cyclist takes the lane, so to
Right.
speak, instead of having them to the right of the vehicle.
And also something to signal to the drivers that are turning right that they can be on the right side of the road
Okay.
to block, so that the cyclists who are going straight can be on left, and the drivers who are going right.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we've seen markings elsewhere in town where they've had a sharrow going forward in the right turn lane. And that
Right.
would be acceptable.
Okay.
I mean, the ideal thing would probably be the infrastructure, but I understand that there are,
Right.
I deal with budgets all the time,
Right.
and I realize that, they're
Right.
fine.
Right. Well, I'm not the designer on the project, but I am the city staff, one of the city staff members in charge of reviewing it.
Yeah, I have a
But
very
I w-
similar position to yours at the
Right.
university.
Okay.
But I will tell you, when we do right turn lanes, and this is just irrespective of this location, we usually look at right turning volumes, and we do look at physical space there too. I think in my presentation, we'll talk a little bit more about the bike boxes. I think in all honesty, I think the consultants are seeing in my conversation with them, that they are weighing out the pros and cons, and they really feel that this is the best approach at this time. That's kind of how it's coming out. I've seen, elsewhere, I've designed those other locations you talked about where, and there we have physical space limitations, and I've watched those, and they do work well, merging collectively together. I think the one issue that they're concerned about, too, is that they tried to design for that 60% crowd, which is the casual adult, and really that's where the students fall in. That's where they're looking. And there's a concern about basically in that situation of them merging together with motor vehicles, just because of the high amount of bus traffic and everything too. And then they're trying to give another, a set of space there because there's just a high amount of pedestrians, particularly at Goodwin Green and at Riding Green, which I'll talk about in a little bit too.
Is there a plan, I kind of fuzzy about where MCAR stops. Does MCAR also incorporate Goodwin and Green?
Yes, and I'll go through that if you want to stick around. I'll walk through all 5 projects tonight. My suggestion to you, because as Cynthia said, we're not acting tonight. When my presentation will be informational, would be to come to the public meeting on the 17th.
Yeah.
That's a great opportunity to record your comments.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Cynthia, you had a hand up too. Yeah.
Yeah, I have some observations about design and the use of bike boxes, but I want to reserve that until after the presentation. But I did want to say that our operators at MTD are trained to merge to the right. And so if they do not, then that should be reported, because we do not want people making right turns from the left of bike lanes. And so that means that we need to address that. So buses are supposed to be over close enough to the curb when they're going to turn right that a bike cannot fit through there. So if there are issues with that, you should let MTD know. You can do that either through the website or through calling. Okay. They're both of those, and MTD can't correct a problem if they don't know it exists. So please feel free to do that. And maybe it's just that they were careless or forgot, but operations on campus are extremely difficult, and when we're going to be changing all this infrastructure, it's even more important that we make sure that those larger vehicles are operating in the safest fashion possible. So I would encourage you to do that.
Yeah, it was going to be MCOR as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So
Right.
Yeah.
we need to
Right.
take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and let's all try to get it right, because but yeah, I definitely second that message that because operators are trained that way, if either of you want to use the cumtd.com or the 3848188 phone number to report that, it is really important for the MTD folks to know which routes might have operators not doing that, and if the north leg of the Goodwin and Green intersection is one where that turn just isn't happening safely, they would really love to know that so that they can figure out what route.
I've advised my own children to report, and they have reported, and I know what happened afterwards in terms of changes in behavior. So that is something that is really important, and I would like to encourage the community to do that. We do not want any crashes that are happening as a result of operator. And our operators, by the way, are fabulous. I don't want anyone to get...
Yeah.
We have the best operators anywhere, but no one's perfect. We're all human, so...
No. Unfortunately, it is more than buses.
Yeah.
Yes, vehicle drivers I cannot account for, and they are not trained very well a lot of the time. So that's an entirely different thing. However, vehicle crash is different than a bus crash. And I will say, by the way, that we have reduced fatalities on campus. We have not had a pedestrian or a bicycle fatality in a couple of years on campus, and it is a result in large part of infrastructure change that has happened, and the additional work that MTD has done with operations and routing. So we used to have a high pedestrian fatality rate on this campus when I came here, and the work that has been done by both the cities and the university and MTD has actually had a really big impact on reducing crashes and fatalities. So that's one of the things that I'm excited about with the MCOR projects. Is I think that we have a further opportunity to improve safety through infrastructure design.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else have questions for John or Daniela? Sue?
Well, I just want to kind of, it seems like the issue is the kind of education issue. And so right now, the infrastructure sets up this situation. And that a bike box might, I agree that some serious research into what's doing it would be in order. Because a bike box, if there were enough guidance to get people to know where they were supposed to be, could get the folks out in front. But whatever happens, it seems like it really matters that there needs to be more out there so that people understand where they're supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. John or Danielle, do you have any final thoughts about your comments? And I know then we'll get into a presentation and more commission discussion, but while you have the microphone, anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think we've covered what we need to cover.
Cool. Well, thanks. I really appreciate it because getting this stuff right is really important. And so thanks for coming out. Okay. Was there anybody else who came tonight who wanted to speak here during public input time? Going once, going twice. Okay. Thank you. So we will move into business items for tonight then. And number 5 on the agenda is a project update about MCOR. So Craig Chunkweiler, the city engineer here, is going to take us through. And on the agenda, you'll see 3 different topics we'll make sure to hit because this is a big one. Part 1, just an overall project update. Part 2, we'll get into these bike boxes in much more detail. And part 3, we'll talk about traffic signal improvements, about leading bicycle interval or leading pedestrian interval on the signal timing. So with that, Craig, take it away, and thanks for putting this all together for us.
Thanks a lot, Brandon. I haven't been promoted to city engineer yet, but assistant's fine.
Oh, okay, great, thanks.
But,
you can tell him I said so, so
yeah,
it must be.
I felt pretty good there for a moment. But, so what I wanted to do here was basically do a presentation to you folks tonight about the MCOR project, so you would have an update, an idea going into maybe the public meeting on Thursday. So you're going to see some advanced things here that the public, I mean, it's on some of the websites, but it'll be really at the 17th meeting here. I really also basically wanted to do it as a courtesy to you folks and so that you wouldn't hear about this secondhand from other people. Or even not go to the public meeting and not see it, and all of a sudden you're out there writing and you're wanting to know what's going on, and particularly why didn't Craig let you know, and that's what Craig's doing. So the MCOR project, as you know, is, or if you don't know, is a really large project where we received this Tiger grant. Actually, it was MTD that received it in conjunction with the cities of Urbana, Champaign, and the University of Illinois. This is an overview of the project. Basically, the first 3 projects are going to be actually project 1, which is in front of the Union, which is within the city of Urbana. 2, which is over here near, basically on Green near Neal, all the way up to, I think it's 6th. And then project 3, which is basically the White Street corridor up here. Projects 4 and 5, which is particularly in Urbana, is the eastern portion of the Green Street section, would actually go several years from now. So this thing's a staggered type project. Next year, I mean, they're looking at basically going out to bid in June of 2016, and this will be a very aggressive type project through the campus zone at that time, a multi-year project. You can see, I mean, there's a lot of money, a lot of expenditures, and it is a good chance to get things right here and really overall improve transit operations, improve bicycle operations, and pedestrian operations through this zone. Keep in mind, we're within the university district, and in all reality, vehicles are last in the hierarchy. Okay? So this is just the general overview, but I'm going to walk you through the exhibits, starting with Project 1, then we'll go to 2, 3, 4, and then we'll come to 5. Well, 1 and 5 are the ones that are within Urbana, but I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of all of the projects. So within 1, here, this is an exhibit that the consultants prepared. So it's an overview of the highlights that are going to happen within this project. And I'll zoom in and we'll kind of walk the corridor. This is Wright Street, alma mater's over here on the corner. Over on the right side, this is Goodwin Avenue. Project 1 continues on to the east, just east of Lincoln, to Busey. You can see within this zone, basically, this will be a complete reconstruction of the pavement system. They'll be putting in dedicated bus stop lanes. Those are what you see in red there. We'll zoom in a little bit on those. Those lanes will be likely a colored concrete just to stand out from the rest. There will be a reduction in the number of lanes through the section. Before, or right now, it's a kind of like a 4-lane section with a median in the middle. It'll turn into basically 1 lane each direction with left turn lanes at select locations. Then there'll be some highlighted things like some boarding islands or some refuge islands, the bike boxes, which we'll get into in a little bit. There'll be a leading bicycle interval, which is basically an advanced signal time at Goodwin Green. Right now at Wright and Green, they're investigating. They will have the leading bike interval, I'm told. They are looking at the potentiality of bike boxes there. That intersection does have a pedestrian scramble, and they're going to keep that pedestrian scramble. When we go to Goodwin Green, they're looking at bike boxes, all 4 approaches, a leading bike interval, and the pedestrian scramble, so they'll keep that there. When we look at the amount of volumes, and I was asking the consultant the other day, tell me how many pedestrians are going through per hour at Goodwin Green, and they're telling me it's about 900 pedestrians per hour. That is our heaviest, in Urbana, our heaviest intersection for pedestrian activity. When I asked where are we at bicycle count-wise, we're seeing somewhere between 70 and 140 bicyclists per hour. I was the engineer that was involved with the Goodwin and Green intersection improvement last year. I was out there this week. I'm seeing more bicyclists there today than I did over a year ago, and that's quite common when we do our improvements. When we did Washington Street as an example over by Brookins, you didn't see very many bicyclists, and the theory out there that you build it and they will come, it really does work. I think that ties into a little bit of the reason why they're looking at the bike boxes and the bike intervals, is because they're anticipating even more bicycle use than what they see right now. Within this zone 2, they're looking at raised or what they call protected bicycle lanes. Basically what that means is the bike lane will sit up a little bit, and we'll zoom in and I'll show you more detail there, but sit up a little higher than the adjacent vehicle lane. We talked about that, I think, last time. But let's just zoom in. We'll kind of go through a little bit more details. That way we could just kind of walk it through the PDF here, west to east. That way you can kind of see a little bit more. The red X's are trees that are basically being removed through the project to make improvements. There will be a swale drainage system on the outside that we're looking at possibilities of bioswales for green infrastructure. We're not sure yet, cost-wise, if they'll be able to do that, or at least get the framework in for future beautification through there, and obviously green infrastructure. I do know that Wright and Green, they're really looking at that heavily right now. There's still a lot out there. Wright and Green is not an Urbana intersection. It is actually Champagne's intersection to maintain. So our improvements actually start on the east leg here. But as you see here, they've separated out the bus movements. And they're telling me, our city staff, that this is really important for the operation of the transit system. So what you see here is like if a bus was going to go northbound, they would actually stay in that right lane, go over and unload and discharge and pick up passengers here. And if they're going to go westbound, they would be, or southbound, they would come over to this lane and in, and then head south. Currently what happens is basically they unload and load at this location, and then there's a big weave that occurs on this leg, which is really not a preferred movement to occur here. I have some more zoomed in here of the Union, but basically in the end, they're looking at closing the west leg of the Union and doing a loop drive that will enhance the safety of pedestrian crossing here, basically going from the quad over to the engineering quad. And I have a more detailed drawing of this that we can zoom in to. But walking it to the east here, and keep in mind that this is within what they call a phase 1 study, so this is the concept study. And then once this is approved, after the public meeting, after input's taken, and then adjustments are made to it, then basically what happens is the city sign off on it, the federal, or IDOT signs off on it, who's the Illinois Department of Transportation, and then the Federal Highway Administration signs off on it. And after that, then they really get heavy into the details of the plan construction. They're already working that simultaneously. There was approval given to do that, but I just wanted to let you know that this is really a fast track project. As we go down here, this is Matthews. One of the things that you'll see here is, we have the crosswalks, and then they're showing this different type of improvement here. I don't know if they got I think on the other project they show more of the detail, but some different type of striping through here. That's unique to our area, and I think they're just wanting to basically differentiate where the bicycles are and where the pedestrians are. There would be a bus stop in between Matthews and Goodwin on the north side. You're seeing that. This is the bike boxes, which we'll get into a little bit further along here. I'm going to zoom out just real quick, and we're going to kind of walk through each little thing through here. Let's see if it pulls up. So this is a typical section. Basically what you see, this is the raised bike lane. So if you can see that there's basically a mountable curb, and then the bike lane sits up higher than that. This planting strip is what I was talking about. It's actually a drainage strip, and then the sidewalk. What's important here is the bikes are now being separated. That cycle track will be eliminated. That's out there now, and the bikes are separated from the pedestrians. On a side note, I went to school here. My wife followed me later when we moved back up here. I told her, you better be careful about, we called it being schwinned. First day she got schwinned and got knocked down. And I think that's just, the reason I'm letting you know that is, it is dangerous when you have the mix of bicyclists and pedestrians in that same zone. That's what they're able to accomplish here, is a separation of those two entities. The bike lane is shown at 5.5, but there's actually a 1.5 foot concrete band, so actually that gives you a 7-foot bike lane in the end. The effective width, I guess. And then they've got 11-foot travel lanes through here. Let me zoom out a little bit, and bear with me, I'm coming down with a cold. Barb's working me too hard. So again, here's the bike boxes, and we'll get into that. I've got an interesting video that I'll show you there. This is the leading bicycle interval. I have something on that too. We'll get into that a little bit more. You've seen the basically what we call the pedestrian scramble and the protected bike lane, and then I have a more detailed drawing of this that we can zoom in on that. Does anybody have any questions with this zone from Wright to Goodwin?
Any questions on this? Cynthia?
So are they going to have a proposed design for Wright and Green for this meeting, or are they still working on
They're
that?
working to refine it as we speak.
Okay.
I think, yeah, I'm anticipating that they would have something, yeah.
Yeah, because I expressed a good deal of concern about the design that they show here, because I am quite convinced that what will happen is that cyclists would come off of the raised bike lane and zip across 2 lanes into the left turn lane,
Right.
and I think that would be extremely hazardous.
Yeah, there's talk of a 2-stage left turn here,
Okay.
or bike box.
Okay.
In all honesty, I haven't seen the details on
Yeah.
that.
Well, I will say, as the person who worked on these grant applications, that one of my primary motivations was to redesign Wright and Green so that bicyclists know where they should be and how they should behave, because right now they don't know whether to behave as a motor vehicle or a pedestrian, and you never know what they're going to do, and that's very hazardous for all the vehicles, but buses in particular have a difficult time here because cyclist behavior is erratic.
Right.
And so I definitely want there to be clear definition for them, and that was why I spoke up in initially looking at this when with MTD, that so I did squawk about that. I didn't make any recommendations, but I did say I think it's very important that we not just bring them up to the intersection and say, okay, figure it out.
Right.
Because the way it gets figured out here is people do all sorts of erratic things.
Yeah, I think the challenge here too is this is again a high pedestrian zone. We have
Yes, it
bicyclists,
is.
and we have a lot of transit activity.
Yep.
So they're trying to figure out how to best get the buses through safely with
Yep.
handling the pedestrians and the bicycles.
Yes,
This one
Absolutely.
and I think Wright and Armory are their 2 most complicated
yes.
intersections on
yeah.
the project.
And I know it's very complicated, and the signal timing is complicated, and everyone their eyes start bugging out. And, But one of the things I will say, too, is that when we were doing Light the Night, I saw dozens of cyclists, and they were using our substandard cycle track, which really surprised me because it's in such bad shape, I won't use it. But there were dozens of people bicycling in there, so it was very interesting to me to see how many people were using that between 3 and 7. And I think our counts hadn't necessarily shown that much activity, but maybe they've done some recounts.
So it sounds like the details of that intersection is something that maybe we'll dive into later, or if it's presented at this week's meeting later in the week.
Right.
Yeah, there'll be a chance maybe then. Okay. And it's part of a later phase of
Well,
work.
it'll be built next year though.
Oh, okay. It would be built
parts
with
of it.
this.
But that's another thing that they're trying to figure out is how to get this built, because this gets really complex with students, and you can't build it in 3 months.
Yeah. And if it's half done, it
yeah.
won't make sense.
We've been looking at incentives, but there are actually rules against the incentives with the government, so we're trying to balance those out.
When you say incentives, you mean for finishing early?
Yeah.
I don't think everybody here knows.
So, yeah, an incentive would be basically you would put money on the table that a contractor could get if they completed it ahead of time.
Yeah.
But there are rules against that,
Yeah.
depending upon the funding.
Okay.
So, ideally, this section that you see on the screen gets done within a summer section, ideally, or at least the main component of it, and particularly around where the pedestrians will be going
Yeah,
back and forth.
Crosswalk. Any other questions on this segment, or? Okay, then if not, Craig will plow ahead.
Okay, so let's zoom in. This is the Union entrance here to get a little bit more of a an idea what's going on. So again, they would close the west entrance, and a lot of that had to do with basically safety with pedestrians. And now you'll be able to come in on the east entrance, and then there's a loop drive around. This thing has been vetted out quite a bit with a lot of people from the U of I. So I've been involved in some meetings, and But there's a lot of interest here because the Union, you know, is definitely it's an historic building for the University of Illinois, as all of them are. Anybody have any general questions here? Nope.
Nope. Okay, thanks.
So this was kind of neat. I don't get to do this stuff as an engineer. You know, I don't know that they use a program or something. I mean, I took watercolor painting, but wow. But I mean, that gives you an idea.
Do you think they can get the flowering trees to bloom all summer?
Yeah. Right. I mean, look how cool that looks.
No.
Yeah, that's a great illustration.
It's going to be really nice. It's going to be a huge improvement.
You know, I think right now, I mean, they're going to be cutting a lot of the trees down, but you can't see the Union as you go by.
Right.
And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, this will open it up quite a bit
Mm-hmm.
through here, so you can see the bus lanes. Like I said, we do have interest in using colored concrete there to differentiate the travel lanes.
Great.
So anybody have any questions here? So this is just a
Maybe the only
concept.
other thing to comment on that you can see pretty well in this diagram and make sure people are clear on is where if you are a bicyclist here on the south side of this road on the top of your picture and you're heading eastbound, you know, from Campus Town to Urbana, it looks like that raised bike lane gets routed actually behind the bus stop and really out of the way through here.
Right. There is, this area right in here is still being looked at. There's a concern with the visibility. We have pedestrians here, we have bicyclists here. That a car could come up here in this zone, and you've got a bicyclist that could come over and not really be well seen at this location. So we've asked them to further analyze this location. You know, it could be where maybe the pedestrians brought down with them. I don't know, but they're looking at that in greater detail.
Okay.
I think, Cynthia, you had a question before. When you have, well, we'll use this one as a guide here. You know, we have a raised bike lane, and how will the ADA work when you're crossing over? In essence, the mountable gutter pan has to be eliminated, so it has to come almost flush to make the ADA requirements. Now, who has precedence over a bike or a pedestrian? Well, when a bike is on a bike lane, it in essence is like a vehicle. So if a pedestrian is not yet stepped foot into the crosswalk, the bicyclist gets the right of way. If a pedestrian steps, it's just like with a vehicle, if they place their foot in the crosswalk, and as long as they're not doing that, like you'll see where it doesn't work is if they do that and they haven't given enough time for a vehicle or a bicyclist to stop. But as long as they have done that, then the bicyclist would have to yield to the pedestrian.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how that would operate.
Okay. Any other questions here, James?
I have a question. Looking at the east end of the pedestrian barrier at the bus stop
Right in
on
here?
the south side, exactly.
Okay.
There is going to be a pedestrian barrier there?
Yeah.
Because thinking about, in particular, the right cycle track, I don't know how many times I've seen people wander in there, had several students come into the shop with broken bikes because people just stood in the way this week.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you wouldn't want to have like no fence and then they come out and walk along this bike lane. So yeah, that's what they're showing conceptually here.
Okay.
I haven't seen any more detail about that. I think there's something down this way too. There's definitely one along through here. There's been a lot of discussion about the interaction of pededs crossing and coming to this location too. We also have concerns about snow removal with this island. So there's still just maintenance issues that have to get worked out there.
Any other, Cynthia?
Well, this may be something that is not a possibility at all, but this summer when I was in Stockholm, Sweden, I brought back pictures, and the one design feature that they had on their separated cycle tracks where pedestrians cross, which I was very intrigued with and I thought worked really well, was basically rumble strips for bicyclists approaching the pedestrian crosswalk. And I don't know that those have been looked at here, whether it's something we could even propose for testing. But I thought that that was a very helpful device, and they would have a sign, you know, pedestrians crossing, yield, and then the bicycle design rumble strips. And I thought it was a helpful way to control that interaction, because they have some tourist areas with very heavy pedestrian traffic and a lot of bicycle infrastructure and bicyclists, and it seemed to work pretty well.
I haven't seen those before. Were they are just subtle enough that you would feel them, but not enough to obviously knock you? Or
Yes, not like a rumble strip you see on the roadway.
right.
Bicyclists hate. Yeah, it was designed specifically for bicyclists, and I'm sure we could get design specifications, but somebody in the U.S. has undoubtedly looked at them, and I don't know if they said, no, we don't want to look at it, but I know we'd have to get approval to do that. But I thought it might be worth asking about.
Okay.
Okay.
You know, a common theme that you see here is separation of movements. You know, throughout this whole project. So.
Okay, Audrey?
So I just wanted, if you could move more to the east to see where the cars cross with bike lanes, because a traditional problem with bike lanes is, you know, cars not seeing them because they aren't in the street.
Right.
And then the car turns in and boom, there's a conflict. So is there, so there's the turn into the Union, and then is there one further to the east too on this?
No, this would be
view,
the,
or this is it?
this is it. If we go back
Are there people still turning to the and coming out of the north side
let's go back.
of the street?
So as we're east here, there's just the one entrance here, and then there's an entrance over here. And then this is
There is the
Matthews.
one on the north side too.
Yeah, yeah,
And cars presumably go in and out of that.
yeah. But I think this is more of a service drive than anything else. The good thing is with them eliminating this, there's no conflict here that used to be here on the west, because there was a drive here too.
Okay, well, Craig, I think we're ready for the next segment here.
Okay. So this is segment 2 of Still Project 1, which they're talking next year. So I'll zoom in again. So we pick back up at Goodwin Green. There would be a bus stop there just to the east there, which there is not one there now. And we're still within the raised bike lanes. We see a bus stop over here and here near Gregory. We have talked about maybe this center median actually being, instead of painted, maybe some type of grassed raised median where there could be some type of plantings in there, which would help break up that visual space. Again, you see the bicycles lanes go around the bus stop. And then as you get to the Lincoln intersection here, you know, again, they're looking at a leading bike and leading pedestrian interval, both going concurrently, and we'll talk about that a little bit there.
Could you explain that a little bit further? Not everyone may understand what that is.
So basically, you could say it's a head start interval, is what it is. It's a 3 to 5 second, like where the bicyclist would get this. There would be a special signal just to the right, and I've got a YouTube video that would kind of give you a little bit better. But it would go in advance, so the bicyclists would get a head start on the vehicles, and also the pedestrians do that too. And they call that, and you'll see in this one video, they call it sometimes a pedestrian head start interval, 3 to 5 seconds to get them out in advance of the cars, so they don't have to immediately compete with the cars.
And one of the benefits of that is it increases your visibility.
Right.
Because you're already halfway out into the intersection, particularly for the pedestrians. A lot of the right hooks are a result of the pedestrians starting at the same time as the cars, and the cars are not paying attention. My own daughter was hit at Vine in Illinois for that very, because of that very reason. And so it really can make a big difference in reducing those right hooks for pedestrians. And I haven't seen as much data on the leading bicycle interval, but I'm assuming that the increase in visibility will have similar benefits.
Yeah. And this would be for the east-west movement, not for north-south.
North-south.
The primary movements here are east-west with the pedestrians and the bicycles. When we get east of Lincoln down to Busey, and Project 1 ends right at Busey, this would just be your traditional bike lanes. Keep in mind they're showing them green. That's just for visibility here. Our intent is not to paint them green at this location. If they do bike boxes, they will likely be green.
About that bus stop there at Busey and Green.
Mm-hmm.
Is that's a traditional, not one of these enhanced bus stops. That's a traditional bus stop where the bus would pull into that rightmost lane in
Yes.
order to let passengers
Yes.
off.
So they would interact with into the bicycle lane. There's just not physical space to create a bus pull off without getting into right of way. And now we're into the residential area.
Yeah.
The start of the residential area.
Yeah.
And it was very important for Urbana to maintain their character of the corridor through that zone. We'll talk about that, within Project 5 there.
Okay,
But let me
great.
zoom out a little bit so you can see. We'll get into the bike boxes here in they call it LBI. Just looking through here, I think you've seen all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So any other questions? So that is in essence Project 1.
Okay. James?
One thing real quick, the unimproved bus stop that's going to cross the bike lane,
Mm-hmm.
is there anything special going to be done to reinforce the road there?
We've talked about that. That section though would be rebuilt in its entirety. We are talking that the section between Goodwin and Lincoln would probably be rehabilitated, but the section east from Lincoln all the way, or at least Busey on down, would be to Race would be completely reconstructed. And when we do that, if we do use an asphalt pavement, we would put in a concrete pad for the buses. And we've
Okay.
been doing that a lot around
Yeah,
town.
because there's been different spots, in particular, Wright and Wright and Gregory. There's a pothole this big,
Right.
because of the buses. So I just wondered.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about this segment before Craig moves us forward? Okay.
Okay. So I just want to show you projects, the projects in Champaign and the other section of the U of I, just so you get a handle on this. I haven't spent much time myself on this. This would be the entrance off of Neal. So I'm going to be discovering a little bit with you because I just downloaded this stuff. But this would be the gateway entrance, right there at Neal. That's kind of a concept drawing. So some type of beautification there. Just zooming in here, so it looks like they'll have some streetscaping that goes on, a sidewalk. This is really a corridor that I'm understanding from Champaign, they're looking at redevelopment wanting to occur, which is really what happened from Wright Street to the west when they redid all of that. There was, as you see, the whole landscape's changed, since I went to school there. So this would be a complete reconstruction, with they're looking at a 4-foot bike lane, counting, and then if you count the gutter pan, that would be a 5.5-foot bike lane with an 11-foot driving lane, which when you have buses, that's about where you want to be. You could get down to a 10.5, which we do on East Green. And then they've got a painted median, it looks like, and so that's kind of, they don't have really a rendering here, a plan view rendering, but that's kind of Project 2. This project was set to go regardless of the receiving the Tiger grant, it just fit in nicely with the Tiger grant. They were able to
Right.
get that taken care of, so.
And since this one's Champaign jurisdiction, basically, if people have comments on it, they can come to that event later this
Yes.
week. This will be fair
Yeah.
game then to
Yes.
really talk to the Champaign folks
Yes.
about. Okay.
So any other questions on this one? Or do you want me to zoom out or look at anything?
Like, I know wider bike lanes are often, or seem to be appreciated by the bike community, you know. If we can get them to 6 feet or whatever, that'd be
Yeah.
great, kind of thing, but,
This section, the pavement's in really bad shape,
Mm-hmm.
too, so.
yeah. Any questions about segment 2 here? Okay.
So this is project 3. Let's see here what we got. Some of these are large files. We'll have to wait a second. So this project 2 and 3 would be done, started next year. Let's see if I can open it up. Start. There we go. So this would start on White Street, which is really where they redid the boneyard here. Let's let it catch up a little bit. So it looks like they're actually doing shared, I guess they call it. This must be a pretty big file.
I can tell you that the reason that the road was not expanded here was because they were going to have to take out an enormous number of trees to widen the roadway to put in a bike lane. The traffic volumes are pretty low, and so it was felt that sharing the road is acceptable, although I know a number of cyclists have told me they don't like riding with all those buses, but you know, that's a choice people can make, but it's all a balancing act, and the number of trees was really, really large.
For me, it's the condition of the pavement because of the buses. That's the huge problem, not the buses themselves. It's, you know, they're always.
It's a brick road.
So it looks like at the intersections they're doing bump outs, which would shorten the distance for pedestrians to cross safely. Here they do have some space with a parkway, which we don't have on Project 5 enough room to do some of that. It looks like they're doing some bus stops here. Looks like some type of transit loading platform with a kiosk. So maybe it's more like they stop in the road and then they have a platform. So this may be not a pull off, but just a platform. That's my interpretation. High visibility crosswalks. Tell me to slow down if I'm going too quick. There's protected left turn for bicyclists down here. I know this was a challenge. This is a unique design here. So you've got the bicycle lane northbound going behind the bus stop. If they want to go west, they have to do this protected left turn, it looks like. And then is there, pardon me? Do you see it there?
The 6th, isn't it?
Yeah. No, this would be right,
Oh, okay.
Yes, Right.
That's right.
right and white.
right. Where we get in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, it's very squirrely.
Oh, so one thing to note too, you know, if you're an experienced bicyclist, you know, you can always go over here to the left and stay in this lane, you know, and then make that left if you wanted to do that. Again, they're trying to design for that casual adult bicyclist.
Is there anything specific you think
Well,
here will
I
be
just-
confusing? or?
I had trouble getting here on time tonight because I had to navigate through the mess there. And what are they doing with the fountain there?
Oh,
Is it going to be you know, I just have this funny feeling that when they get done, it'll be even more of a weird amalgam of pedestrian and bicycle and construction and visibility.
Yeah,
This project unfortunately doesn't have jurisdiction over that.
over that,
Mm.
right.
But you can
Okay.
ask about it at the meeting.
So it sounds like, yeah, things people
Mhm.
can come to the meeting and ask about are
Mhm.
whether that Sharrow, well, there weren't even quite Sharrows in the picture, whether the
There-
shared lane approach works and whether it'll be marked as Sharrows and whatnot.
They were going to put Sharrows in, is
Okay.
my understanding,
Okay.
and they just don't show them on
Okay.
here.
So as we go to the south, now we're going down towards Green Street and the Alma Mater.
Okay.
So this is kind of, well, with this would be Springfield right here at this point.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts on this bicycle intersection crossing?
Yeah, how do people feel about that concept of the bike lanes being marked, kind of the bike lane route being marked through the intersection parallel to but separate from the PED crosswalk?
I'll say I like it because that was a comment that I made from the planning department when they asked for our comments. I like seeing that that they paid that comments in mind. I'm not sure if this would be the best way to do it, but who knows what would be the best way.
My experience is from bicycling in other communities that have this, that it is helpful. It helps alert the motorists that they are to be looking and where to be looking for the cyclists going through an intersection. And I feel like they pay more attention when it is done that way. That has been my experience.
Okay.
Now, that's just anecdotal, but I think that there is some evidence that it's helpful. I don't know how much research has been done on that, but
Okay.
I also want to say on White there will be lighting put in, so it'll really improve the lighting, and I think that'll make a big difference in safety. Everybody knows, of course, the condition of the road is a safety issue, but I think that'll be nice too.
Okay.
So any other questions on Project 3?
Okay.
Are we good?
Yep.
Do we need to see the cross-section, or are we good?
I think we're okay.
There's a theory that we just wear you down and then you just say yes.
Mhm.
Everything.
Don't laugh, that is actually
I'm just-
That does happen, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm getting a cold, so I gotta tell you, I'm getting tired myself, so we'll go to Project 4. So this one, at the time that I pulled this from their site, wasn't all prettied up at this point, but it looked like, so this is Armory down here, and the grad library would be back over in here. No, actually Armory would be over in here, and so it looks like bike lanes, standard bike lanes coming up. This would be, is this 6th? I think this is 6th. Yeah, here. There is some, so they're gonna be doing some revamp of the parking around here. So as we zoom in, right in Armory was, I know, a lot of discussion there. So you can see
wow.
bike lanes, east and west, and this one was actually, and I think some of the people were still, they were involved in this. The bicycle community had a meeting. A lot of people came. I know there were some people here on the commission that were there, and I think the result here, this was a challenging intersection, and there was some talk about, removing the bike lanes completely, and I think that there was eventually a compromise, and so you do see the bike lanes that continue on through, and then the bus movement would actually be one-way northbound, and then there'd be a loading zone here on that northeast corner. So the grad library's over in here. There's a lot of stuff going on here. A lot of pedestrians.
And so
crossing the
buses
zone.
would not stop on the south, right there.
Right now, they stop right in here.
Okay.
Now they'll turn the corner and come over in here, or on this side, and then there'll be
And that's a huge
Platform.
improvement.
yeah.
I ride that every day, and it is a disaster.
It's horrible. It's scary. Yeah. Yeah.
Looks like they're doing some type of, it's almost like a jug handle here.
So that they don't just zip across there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
It
can
looks
tell
like
you
if you're-
that the transit district is the one that had to compromise because one of the goals was to get back to having two-way bus traffic here for a variety of reasons. We're in such constricted space because of the buildings and the historic nature of the library that there just wasn't space to do everything, and putting in the priority for the pedestrian safety, this location being the first priority, there was eventually this compromise arrived at, and it is going to be a huge improvement for the pedestrian and bicyclist users in this location.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we should all thank the MTD. I mean, I think, and also the bicycle community, because without that voice, I'm not sure, it's easy for people not to understand, and I think that's the struggle we're going through with this bike box issue right now, too.
Mm-hmm.
So as we head north here, you can see that they'll still maintain that bus-only lane, where then cars would still go to the west.
Yeah.
Any other questions here on this section? No? All right.
Yep.
So let's see what here. So this would be the next section of that. So now we're really into a bus-only zone through here, so no cars at all.
And the bike lanes basically are routed behind those bus platforms.
Right, and there will be fencing.
With fencing and marked
so
crosswalks.
that you don't have,
Right.
yes.
You don't get Schwinn stepping off the bus.
Right.
Or you don't, right.
Yeah, yeah.
For the
yeah.
bicyclists,
Yeah.
people are stepping in front of you without any warning.
Yeah.
So you see here, cars would come down. And this would be a case in point where they are able to get the space in to make that right turn lane, and then have the bicycles go through.
Okay. Wow, that's a big change, but it seems like much improved from the horrible sort of substandard two-way cycle track, whatever you call it, that's there now. So, which, yeah, yeah. Years of debate, and this is a big improvement. Any
Any other
questions,
questions here?
about this segment?
Okay.
Okay.
Let's go to project 5. So now we're back to Urbana. So this would be 2018 construction starting at Busey and then heading east to Race. And really, this is probably the most straightforward project of them all. The curb and gutter limits do not change, so the road does not get wider. But there would be parking that we're going to seek to have removed along the north side of the road all the way through the project. I think I spoke about that last time. We would like to, right now they'll improve the ramps at each intersection. There's a possibility that we can include the sidewalk. The sidewalk has got some hazards, a lot of tree heaves.
Can we widen it as well?
Not really. No, I mean, well, it'll be, some areas it's 4 foot and it'll be a standard 5-foot walk through that zone.
Okay, that's what I was hoping, is for 5 feet.
We're actually investigating, one of the things we're gonna look at is some trees, there's a lot of trees, I've walked it with the arborist, but that are declining trees. There's a few ash trees that are gonna come out. But there are some specimen trees that are really nice that we may approach property owners to seek permanent easements to run the sidewalk around and onto their property. to save the trees if we can.
Okay.
I think it's important to maintain that look and feel along this residential corridor. This is the Presbyterian church. There would be a pull off here that we're looking at because they had some concerns about the loss of loading and unloading for particularly their senior parishioners.
Okay.
Same thing down to the east at the Unitarian Church. So you do see bus stops. Like I know this is a heavy bus stop here at Orchard.
Mm-hmm.
There's quite a bit of use. So again, the bus would pull off into the bike lane, but there would be a pad.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then McCullough's there. I'm going to go ahead and start from McCullough over. This road, we had anticipated to reconstruct this road in the 5-year plan, but with the IMCO project, we were able to move it up forward. And the pavement is not in good shape through here.
Mm-hmm.
So as you see, I mean, it's really a fairly straightforward. Here's the Unitarian Church with a pull off in there. Now we're getting closer to downtown Urbana.
Mm-hmm.
With the library being over on this corner, there would be still a raised median in here. This is a case in point where they would be using sort of similar to our other designs in town where we'd have a shared right turn lane at this location
Mm-hmm.
due to the lack of space.
Just a little question about the green sharrow kind of that was right near your cursor.
This one?
Yeah, do many bikes ever go straight there? Because all you get if you go, if you really like follow the green sharrows and go straight through,
You know,
is,
it could be where it could be in the through left.
Okay.
I would agree. I'd say that this is more of a heavier movement. And
Yeah.
then since we've installed bike lanes on
Yeah.
race, I see them more up and down and then occasionally left to go into here to the
Mhm.
library.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think most cyclists would either be turning left or right.
So do you think, is that the consensus of the group that maybe
Well, I
more
think
so?
it probably depends on the day. I think people who are going to the market on Saturdays may go straight and then zip through the little segment between the parking lot there at the Methodist Church, because there's so much traffic turning in to people who seem to not figure out they can park across the street on Illinois instead of cruising around in that lot by the church. And so if you want to avoid all that traffic, you can go straight and then you turn right right before the entrance and zip through that little area and stay out of some of the traffic. So I think it probably depends on the day and the time.
Okay.
I think generally people probably are going left and right more often, but we have a lot of bike traffic on Saturdays for the market.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
You know, Charlie just mentioned maybe both lanes,
Yeah.
perhaps. I'll
Put it-
discuss that with them. I
yeah.
think they like to do it in one. That's the primary lane, whatever it ends up being. But
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sue,
And-
did you?
And I'm just thinking that consistency might be a good idea.
Right.
You know, people are just getting used to, I can get out as far left as hovering there, and you could,
Hmm.
you know, making a left turn from that place wouldn't be bad either, because you're,
right.
but
Right.
that's also not going to be happening very often.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's kind of a driveway, not a through street.
Right.
We could see
Well-
what their counts are and which movement ended up being the heaviest one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to know.
Too.
Okay.
I haven't seen Sharrows in both. They usually do just one.
A
but-
primary.
But it doesn't mean, I mean, we're kind of on the cutting edge on a lot of stuff, so we might be able to try
Yeah.
that as well. James?
James, did you have a thought on this or a question?
Is there any thoughts to continuing Green Street, like to make it connect?
You connect,
There are
Take out
probably
Lincoln Square.
Taking out Lincoln
thoughts,
Square?
James, but I don't think there are any plans.
Can I put that on the table? Because I know a lot of pedestrians and cyclists would like a small tunnel.
Uh-huh.
oh,
Like if you're getting on the East Green Street part, which
Yeah.
is a lovely corridor for bikes and pedestrians, yeah, being able to get from the East Green Street to the West Green Street.
You would see a lot of.
Okay.
what about a bridge? Go right over the top.
Bridge over the mall.
You know, I'd ride it. I'd ride it every day.
Well, it's in the record. We've got it down.
Okay. Any other questions then?
Yeah, any other questions about this piece?
Okay.
This looks like a great connection.
Craig, I'll throw out a crazy idea. Why, or just as an idea, what about making that a left turn only lane and having the right lane be straight and right?
I think it's because of the heavy movement. It's a through left. Because that left movement I know is a heavy movement, and then there's a right that is a corresponding movement, but it's really there's a lot of bus movement there at that moment, at that place.
Not much straight through.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So why
Okay.
does it matter which one the straight's
Right.
attached to?
Right. I'll tell you what. I'll pass this
We'll
on
flag
to the
this.
consultant
Yeah,
and see what.
we'll flag this count issue.
Right.
Any other questions about this segment? Okay.
Okay. So
Craig, you said, we talked some about the bike boxes and the kind of leading bike interval or leading ped intervals, but what
so
else?
I have some videos, but I want to show some pics first, though.
Okay, great.
That I was out there. This was actually yesterday.
Oh, wow.
So this is about 10 o'clock at Goodwin Green. So
There's not a single car in your picture.
You know, that's true. And that wasn't by design.
Or here's that red, I'm sure.
And this is actually right at about 2 till 10, so
Yeah.
not the best time to pick. I mean, there's heavier traffic.
Keep
This
all
is
the
where,
cameras out.
as they talked about, I mean, really the bad part of there's a loop here, which then encourages, bicyclists to be here.
Mm.
And then when you have that bus that's going to turn around to the right.
Well, I think one of the things we have to try and make sure of, I think isn't there a parking spot here?
There's one back this way.
I think that
yes.
that parking spot needed to be taken out, and the dashed line needed to be extended farther back so that the merge movement can happen sooner. I mean, what's happening is if you don't have enough room for the merge, the bus just can't get over in time to turn right there. So it's what some of the conversation about what's been happening with the buses may be a result of the design that they are not supposed to merge until the lines are
Yeah,
dashed.
what you see here, you can barely see it. This is the edge of the project is what happened. And
Ah.
that's why.
So we didn't change,
Yeah.
We
But
didn't
this is
continue
a city street, isn't it?
It is, but I'm saying, but this was federal highway money, and we can't go
Right, but we
beyond
could still
that.
take that parking spot out.
There's a lot of funny rules, but anyway, you're right.
Yeah.
on our own
There-
dime. We can
Here's
take
a
Yes.
bicyclist
Yes, I think that's the
using
problem.
that and going through.
Yeah, that's a great picture.
Yep.
So let's look at these videos. So this is a bike box video that I just found tonight that, I don't know, I thought it was kind of interesting. See if we can expand it. Well,
Can you put your microphone by your speaker?
Cyclists and drivers go through the intersection like they normally would. If a car has to turn right, the driver should check to make sure the bike lane is clear before they go.
Oh, well, sure, that makes sense. So what's with the green box, and what are all those crazy lines on the road for?
Okay, so there's that box in front of where the cars stop, right? When the light is red, the cyclist moves into the box and gets into position. So if he wants to turn left, he goes to the left side of the box. If he wants to turn right, he goes
Into the right side of the box. Hey, I think I'm getting the hang of this.
Just make sure you use your hand signals so the cars know what you're going to do.
Whoa, look at the signs.
At intersections with a bike box, cars and bikes aren't allowed to turn right when the light is red. Just keep in mind that bikes and cars have to share the road. They both have the same rights and responsibilities, so they got to watch out for one another and follow the rules of the road.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay, when the light turns green, the cyclists go first. Once they've cleared the bike box, the cars can go.
Ah, well, that's pretty easy. So we just move into the left side of the bike box, right?
You got it
That's cute. Yeah, go ahead.
Right.
That, right, on the stale green, basically, it's gonna be incumbent upon the bicyclist and the motorist to work with each other. I mean, that's what it is. And that's a good question.
Oh, okay, yeah, here's a different one. Well, so the question was, yeah, would people know, is the question kind of, would people know how to use the bike box?
Right.
Is it an educational
Right.
question?
That's what
Right.
I was saying.
Let me go back in here. Did I have? So this is actually the design that they're proposing. So it's a little different than that video. The bike box is only through and up in front of the bike lane and the through lane, not the left turn lane. The reason is because of there's heavy bus movements through here. These are actually fairly tight corners through here, so they felt that it wasn't really best to have bicyclists at that location. So if a bicyclist is going to turn left, they would actually be in the lane at that location. I agree. You know, we've looked at the stale green issue, and look, in the end, and I'm not here to defend this, I'm just giving you information, but in the end, it's about basically pros and cons of getting the bicyclist out in front of the cars with the leading bike interval, and having the designated space, I think, for that. They just felt with the casual adult bicyclist that it wasn't really good to mingle the two together in a standard lane. But I do think if you have any concerns, it's a good time to go to the meeting and express that.
Yeah, and these would be the first bike boxes, I think, in Champaign-Urbana, if this is what ultimately the community decides to do. I know I see them a lot in other towns, and I don't ride on them much. I'm usually, don't have a bike with me when I'm traveling, but it's definitely something that people in other communities with more of them, the education factor might already be, out there into the bike community. Here it would be really new. So if we're going to do it, it would be incumbent upon all of us in the community to make sure we're educating people about it. But let's have that debate about whether this treatment seems like one that makes sense and will be safer. Any questions about it, Sue?
So would there be a leading bike green light there?
Yes.
Which would mean that the bikes would be starting sooner than the cars, so you
Yes.
wouldn't have the
Yeah.
simultaneous
You wouldn't
start.
both be
I
racing.
think it takes care of the issues at the beginning. The
Yeah.
concern is after.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
After the cars have cleared, the bikes have cleared, and then now you have the stale green, they call it.
Do you
So
want
that's
to
the
show us the
concern.
leading bike interval video? I think
Yeah,
that might be.
let's see what.
That one might illustrate this light timing.
So you can see.
If you started on green in Victoria, you would get the right turn bike signal on green. You'll see that coming up here in the next cycle. We've installed a Q-jump bike signal here. That'll come up in about 6 seconds. It's yellow for Victoria, the side street. The green comes up, the walk comes up, in advance of the
Green and walk
Broadway.
for bikes.
There's no conflict because all it's going is a left turn from the side street. Green comes up, you start on your bike, you see the no turn.
And now the
Green
cars
sign
go.
come up, the green bike signal comes up. The reason this Q-jump is installed is so you can get from Victoria to Williams a little bit easier. So it guarantees that the movement for bikes will occur with only the one stop. Gives a little wider berth for lower speed cyclists to make that movement through the 3 signals and only having one stop.
So with Goodwin Green though, and Wright and Green, I asked the question. I said, well, would the bicyclist and the pedestrian have the same, because these came on at the same time. The answer is no, not at these, because of the pedestrian scramble. So actually it would be bicyclists first, I think is what I'm understanding, get a jump, then the pedestrians would go. One of the things that the concern we're seeing with Goodwin Green right now, and I think it's operating mostly well, is just the bicyclists aren't quite sure what to do at that location.
Yeah, bikes sometimes mix with the peds during ped
Right.
scramble,
Yes.
or some of them wait around to go with the motor vehicles, and it's
Yeah.
Confusing.
it's too
Yeah.
confusing. Yeah.
Yeah. Now at Lincoln and Green, though, it would be a joint LBI and LPI, which I'll show you in a minute too.
Okay.
Okay.
Questions on this one, Cynthia?
Well, I didn't have questions, but I had some comments because I've been talking with the consultants and giving input, and I've had a number of conversations. I've expressed concerns about design, and I've looked at some of the data. I pulled out some of the studies that have been done on it. Portland has found that they had like a 94% increase in the number of cyclists when they put the bike lanes and the bike boxes in at these intersections. And even with an increase in right-turning vehicles, they actually had a decrease in conflicts between vehicles and cyclists. They saw an increase in yielding by motorists, and they also did surveys and found that 86% of the motorists understood the bike box and how to behave around it. In Austin, Texas, and Columbus, Ohio, they did some before and after study, and they found that there was a decrease in avoidance maneuvers by motorists and bicyclists after they installed it. So I think one of the things that is really important is how this is marked and signed. And the communities I've been in where they have these facilities in place, there is a sign that is an MUTCD sign that says that for motorists saying, it shows the cyclists going through, and then it says yield to cyclists for right, with the right turns shown there. And so it alerts them that if they're going to turn right, they need to particularly be paying attention to the fact that there is a bike lane to the right and people will be going through. That's a particular concern here during class change time because class change time is too short on this campus. And so everybody is going at absolute frantic pace. And so we've got to have motorists paying attention. Motorists, by and large, are the least frantic drivers during class change time because it's so chaotic. And so if we can get them to pay attention, that really makes a difference. The other thing is that bicyclists are behaving that way with or without the infrastructure. I see bicyclists making left turns from the right side of the road on a regular basis when there's no bicycle infrastructure. So one of the things that I know from the research is that infrastructure is self-enforcing, and if we provide the infrastructure with more guidance to people as to how to behave, I do think that it will improve safety. And if we find that that is not the case, if we feel like it actually has not improved safety, it is paint. It can be changed. This is not a structure that's built into the road. So I have arrived at the conclusion that I think it will improve safety in these locations. And as someone who's also looking at this on behalf of MTD, this is a big concern for the bus movements. And I think that it will improve safety for those modes using these intersections, which are very busy intersections, particularly during class change. The main thing is I think it'll improve predictability in bicyclist behavior, and that will improve safety because they will have an indication of where they should be and how they should behave to a degree that they do not currently have. So those were just my thoughts, and I've spent a lot of time and thought and conversation and reading and looking at this because as someone who's working with all of these groups, that has been a concern. So I can share the research. I think that it's easy to find, and if people want to look at it, we can provide links to it.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, Charlie has one. Yeah, I'll let you from the audience chime in here.
The issue on bike boxes, I was going to interject myself into this discussion, but the one thing that's being left out here is exactly Portland and their experiences. There's one really important thing to know about Oregon. Bikes are required to be in bike lanes, and cars can't go over the bike line to make a right-hand turn. Okay, yeah, exactly, yes. That's part of their problem.
Wow,
So
that's
when you
different.
look at the statistics of Portland and their studies, you got to keep that in mind. The other thing about the studies is that, yes, you have the per capita, the exposure decrease ratio that's occurring. Bikes are going up, so bike accidents are going up, but when you adjust for exposure, it's going down. What you need to look at is the fine print in the study, which shows where the accidents have increased. They're at the intersections where there are downhills and the average speed of the bicyclist is 17, 18 miles an hour. Okay, and they're trying to go through all these elaborate now attempts to counter that because that's where the fatalities are occurring, okay, on those downhills. And motorists just do not understand the speed that a bicyclist can go. And so this gets back to the issue of the scramble that occurs between classes. People are going full tilt. They're anxious to get where they're going, and things are going to happen. Bikes are going through there as fast as they can. It's flat here, and you have inexperienced bicyclists, inexperienced motorists. Education never can stop on this campus. And my concern here is that because you always have new students, you always have new drivers, you will never be able to get to the point where people really understand bike boxes. And then, if you put the bike boxes in, we won't have vehicles getting over to the right or anything like that. The real solution, and this is in the Portland study, is a right turn lane for vehicles. And the best thing you can do here is compromise and come up with the 4 more feet you need for these intersections. You've got a 7-foot bike lane. You need 4 more feet for a shared right turn bike lane. A bike lane that goes forward and a right turn lane for the vehicles with the Sharrow marks like we use on East Washington. If you want to have a Vision Zero type situation of no fatalities and no accidents involving pedestrians and bicycles, you need to come up with the infrastructure that's going to give you the highest probability of doing that, and that's a turn lane. And so, come up with the extra 4 feet here. You don't need to come up with another 11 feet. You just need to take the 7 that you've got, add 4 feet, and try to get right turn lanes here and skip the nonsense of bike boxes. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. That's good, helpful to kind of know where people are at. Craig,
Can I
yeah,
add
other
one more
commission
thing?
questions, and then
I know the consultants did talk to the folks in Portland and the city staff there, and they told them that in terms of post installation of what is happening there. And what they told them is that they've had crashes go down at 7 intersections, but they were up significantly at 4 intersections. And the 4 intersections that were the ones where they have the downhill, one of them was Southwest Madison and 3rd. They also have 4,000 bicyclists per day at that location, which is very high. And so the problem there was the downhill location, the bicyclists would catch up with queued vehicles and they would zoom by. So they've done additional signage and markings there to alert cyclists and motorists. And they had another downhill location where they had a similar situation. So I think that we might have a few cyclists that go that speed. By and large on campus, I don't see as many going 20 miles an hour as I do more in the range of 10 to 12. But it's something to take a look at, and whether or not they can reconfigure it for right turn only lanes, I don't know. But I think that the bike boxes still offer some advantages that we ought to take into consideration, and I think we ought to take a look at some more of the data that the Portland folks provided to our consultants.
Okay, thanks, Cynthia.
The other
Okay,
thing-
Charlie, are you going to respond
Yeah,
to
I
this?
was
I'll
gonna
let
say
you have
the other-
one last
the other
response, then
thing-
we'll go
the
back
other
to
thing-
Craig.
The other concern there is that it's not so much the speed of bicyclists, it's that because vehicles tend to travel slowly on campus, or, there's a lot of hang-ups, I'm all the time overtaking vehicles, even at 10, 12 miles an hour on the bicycle. There's lots of overtaking that occurs because of buses or trucks or deliveries and so on. So the overtaking issue is a given on campus. And so again, it's the overtaking on stale greens that are not addressed by bike boxes. And some situations are improved, but there are situations that are not. And that's what I'm saying. The Portland study points to those downhills as one example. And I'm suggesting that there are other scenarios on a campus that would be similar to that. And a lot of it is the inexperienced drivers and inexperienced cyclists that we have here that is constant. They're 18 to 22 years old.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Craig, do you have any other pieces you wanted to show us?
I just want to show this video on leading pedestrian interval that I thought was fairly well done.
An LPI is a leading pedestrian interval. What it does is it gives the pedestrian a head start in front of the cars. The cars will be waiting at a red light, and the pedestrian gets a walk sign, and they're able to enter the crosswalk, and then the cars get the green light. So the pedestrians at that point are well established in the crosswalk. That's why it's also known as a pedestrian head start or a delayed vehicle green. I cannot think of anything more important than LPIs in our community. It gives you a protection from turning cars, and the most dangerous is when they are turning and they are coming in your back. So you are not seeing them, and in fact they are kind of not seeing you because they are arriving very quickly. LPIs are generally 3 to 5 seconds long, but sometimes they can be as long as 10 seconds or even more. The number one cause of pedestrian fatalities occur when a car strikes a pedestrian crossing in the crosswalk, and 2/3 of pedestrian conflicts happen when the pedestrian is actually crossing with the light.
Now you notice the traffic is completely stopped as the walk sign goes on. So the pedestrians start first as the traffic stays still, like this lady crossing here, and they won't move for a whole 17 seconds, and people have enough time to cross exclusively. And
Yeah,
not
New
worry
York.
about turning traffic, especially coming off in a neighborhood like this from the Lincoln Tunnel, where we get volumes of trucks and buses.
The cars and trucks coming out of the Lincoln Tunnel would actually conflict with us and not even stop when we would cross. So it took a petition that was circulated across the different buildings at this intersection and asking the DOT to come and fix this problem. We've had problems crossing 34th Street ever since I can remember. Having the lights changing has been great. I mean, now, you see the traffic waiting for you to cross, and we cross much more confidence and much more peace of mind.
What I call an LPI is a life-preserving interval. An interval of time which is given to you to save your life. Because that's a space where you can walk and you have like your guardian angel protecting you. We think that they should be the standard at any major intersection where there's a lot of turning vehicles, especially wide ones where there's a high pedestrian volume. They're very cheap to put in place, especially at signalized intersections. It's just a matter of retiming. So it's an easy, cheap solution to making intersections safer for pedestrians. I also in French call that le petit interlude, which is the little space of time where it doesn't belong to anyone except to you.
That's funny.
So that would be what would be installed with the leading pedestrian or bicycle interval at Lincoln and Green. Probably still 3 to 5 seconds, not the 17-second shoot they were talking about in there. But you know, what's neat about this is, you know, this could be the start of installation elsewhere. I'm not guaranteeing, but you know, these things come to town. And, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So really, that's all I had on MCOR today.
Okay, so yeah, I'm wondering, and it's coming up on 9 o'clock, so I guess what I'm thinking is maybe let's just spend the last few minutes, if there's any other questions from the commission or anyone on all of the bike box, leading bike or leading ped interval stuff and MCOR. I'm almost wondering if we skip the Bradley topic, if it can
That's
wait,
fine.
if it can wait a month,
It can
if it's
wait.
not a timely decision or whatever.
Right. Yeah, it can wait. I mean,
Okay.
we're awarded a contract to patch Bradley, so we're going to repair that, and then they install bike lanes next year. And really, what I wanted to do is just get some feedback from the commission
Yeah.
before this is. So this is, we haven't really designed anything yet. I've got some concepts.
Okay.
So yeah, it can wait.
Okay, great. Is there any other, I saw one hand in the audience too, I think I will acknowledge that in just a minute. Any other commission comments on the bike box or leading ped interval stuff? Okay, no others? Okay, so I saw Jeff's hand in the audience, and I know it's kind of not our usual order of operations here, but I'm glad, let's get all the ideas and issues out on the table. It's an important debate tonight. I really appreciate people coming
Yeah,
out.
thanks.
So
And these are just comments, not to extend things very long. And appreciate Craig taking the time to do all this so we can have a head start. I'm anticipating that 5 hours at the open house is barely enough to get your mind around all this and give input to people. A couple things I didn't hear tonight, which I'll try to explore, but one is the speed on Green Street. You know,
the motorized vehicle speed limit
yeah,
type?
is it 25 University, or is it going to be 20, or is it going to be 15?
Our intention is to lower it to 25, but we have to go through city council to do that. But it would be 25 up through Lincoln, so from Wright to Lincoln, within the university district, 25 mile an hour. We may pursue Springfield as well within that
Sweet.
corridor.
And I think you could even go lower, because when everything slows down, then everybody has more time, and people are just more relaxed. I'm going through here; it's not going to be in a hurry, and then you can monitor all the activity around you. So that would be one thought that I'll
Okay.
kind of look into and share. The second, on your maps of the Green Street in front of the Illini Union, where you've got that massive pedestrian crosswalk, you didn't say anything about a pedestrian signal. Is there, or just pedestrians at will can cross there?
At this time, they're not looking at a pedestrian signal, I don't believe.
I would suggest, if you don't, run the conduit so you could add them later. Because when I looked at that and I thought, I mean, when you see just a stream of people coming off a bus or whatever, you're going to have people backed up going from east to west, big time. Because you're waiting, because if you don't have enough time for this one person who's going to enter that crosswalk just when a group clears, you have to wait. And then, of course, there's a bicyclist coming in. And that's my experience even when I'm on a bike going through there. So I think you might just need a pedestrian signal so that you can stop the 4 or 5 people that keeps that stream continuous. Let them wait.
This
So-
has been a topic of conversation in a number of locations on behalf of transit, because in order to get people to their classes, the buses have a very difficult time finding a gap in pedestrians at some locations. And so there has been a request for signal installation in a couple of different locations, specifically for that reason, that the buses don't have a gap and they just simply cannot operate. I don't know in this location, I haven't heard them discuss it as much. I think it hasn't been as big of a problem on Green as it has in some of the other locations, but it is absolutely something that they have been looking at. So it would be interesting to see what the operations folks at MTD had to say about that location.
Yeah.
So I would say, I would characterize it, I don't think there's a final decision one way or another.
That's true.
At this location that
Yeah.
I've heard. So-
I would just build it
Okay.
out so you've got that option, because I think need to be some fine tuning, and you can't anticipate what everybody's going to do. But I really appreciate the refinement, because I know as soon as you make a decision to change the design for one big reason, then you got 4 or 5 little things that show up, and then it moves. So I really appreciate that. And I didn't hear tonight real clarification of the roles, or of what bikes do at pedestrian scrambles. And so I don't know if that's more thought out and just didn't get expressed, but I think you got a bike box in front of a pedestrian scramble, so what's going to happen? And what's going to happen is you're going to have a little, and unless it's really clear, you're going to have a little of everything happening, which adds to more indecision. So, do you know, has there been more discussion about that?
I think they're thinking that with the LBI, that it would clear the bicyclist in advance of the pedestrians crossing. So that would help that. Whereas, like right now, they what I've observed is bicyclists sometimes operate as vehicles and sometimes as pedestrians, and they kind of pick and choose. I saw a bicyclist go through the left turn lane he was in the left turn lane, it went all red, and then he drove through. So, you know, and I think it just comes down to I will tell you, I'm not an experienced rider, but when I ride like a vehicle, I have greater luck than when I ride like a pedestrian. But there, they seem to kind of want to intermix, and it's hard to, kind of control that. As you saw in that one picture, I mean, there was just that was a pedestrian interval, and there was a lot of bicyclists going too at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I think if Cynthia's raised this, and I think we just really need good clarification for, is this design intended for bikes to be dedicated as a vehicle or to be able to switch, and how are we going to make that the sort of the law of the land around here?
Right. I think from what I understand, the intent is that they would operate as a vehicle. If they did operate a pedestrian, then they should be off of their bike and walking their bicycle. Right.
Yeah, and there was a comment there from the audience, but yeah, that ticketing and police enforcement and education and enforcement and all that wrapped up when this is rolled out will be important.
Yeah.
James?
I agree, because I've actually been told by several engineers at the university that you can ride through a pedestrian scramble on campus.
They
So,
think so, right? Yeah.
They think so.
That we definitely need to make that kind of agreed upon, and then educate everyone as best as we can, because it seems to be a lot of miscommunication on all levels.
Yeah, okay. So between the 3 jurisdictions of traffic engineers and police departments, we're not all on the same page.
Sounds like we need a Lego video.
Yep, time for the Legos. Audrey?
I go through that quite a bit, and I feel completely uncomfortable bicycling in the pedestrians. I just jump right off the bike. I don't understand why that's difficult.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. The pedestrians are going so many which ways. I feel like I can't safely ride in that pedestrian chaos, because they kind of, go at any moment. They'll turn or look up from their phone, or they're texting or whatever, and it's like I don't want to be in the middle of that.
I think some of the behavior now is a result of the fact that the bicyclists have been mixed in with the pedestrians on the sidewalk on the north side of Green with that cycle track. And so when they get to the signal, they are still behaving as pedestrians. On Wright, I mean, they just have no idea what they're supposed to do. There's no indication as to what they're supposed to do. So this has to be designed in a way that provides some guidance. Now, that's not to say everybody will follow that guidance, but at least the majority of people typically go with the guidance that is provided in the infrastructure if it makes sense. And if the signal timing works well for them. I know in Chicago, when they put in the cycle tracks, they had issues with cyclists running the red lights. When they put in the bike signals, it dramatically decreased cyclists running red lights. So having the bike signal also giving them a phase in which they know that they are able to go without interference will help as well, I think.
Okay. Any other questions for Jeff, or questions from the commission, comments? Okay.
I have one comment.
Yeah.
I think it's
Cynthia?
really exciting that we're getting to do this.
Yeah, thank you. This is a really important meeting, so I'm glad
I mean,
we got to.
it's going to be a huge improvement,
Yeah.
and it's a fabulous opportunity here. And there are a lot of nitty gritty details, and it's going to involve a lot of compromise, and nobody's going to get everything they want, but it's going to be a huge improvement in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for everyone for taking the time. I know it's almost 9 o'clock here, so I think we will kind of wrap up and just highlight what's next. That public input meeting on the 17th, that would be Thursday evening this week at.
Actually, Thursday during the day.
Oh, it's during the day, 'cause it's a
11
long
to
one.
12 and 4 to 6 at Alice Campbell Alumni Center.
Okay.
In Urbana.
Okay, great. And so we're going to skip the new business item tonight and save that Bradley bike lane discussion for our next meeting. Under announcements, yeah, any announcements from the commission? Cynthia, I heard you first.
Yes, you are all cordially invited to participate in Walk and Roll to School Day, October 7th. There has been an invitation sent to city council members. To the best of my knowledge, we have not received any responses yet. I'm sure we will. And if you are going to participate, please let us know. We like to know where we're going to have celebrities participating. And I guess I need to make sure also the Urbana Police Department has had a heads up. So we're moving forward with that. I also had a meeting with the administration school board recently, and they are talking about trying to, they're going to talk to the schools about doing more bike rodeos this coming spring. So I'll be talking to we might get to increase education in our schools. And then, of course, we have the Bike Summit coming up and the NACTO workshop. They still have room for people in that workshop. And so please, if you have the opportunity to sign up or you know someone who's interested, please do sign up. It's a great opportunity because normally you have to go somewhere else and it costs a lot more money.
Okay. Any other announcements?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So for Light the Night, do we have an idea of how many lights we're giving away?
Yes, we do. We gave away just yesterday, in fact, my intern Emily counted them out. We actually, and I sent out a report to the organizing committee, we had 900 sets installed. So it didn't seem like that many because people weren't standing around and waiting. Our volunteers are so well trained and we had so many of them, we were pulling people off of the street. So we have some sets left, and I made a recommendation about how to divide those up between the law enforcement agencies and then have a few in reserve. So it was a very successful event, and I made a few suggestions for next year to improve visibility further. We didn't get any media coverage. And so I'd like to try and identify ways to address that and make sure, because that's one of the purposes of the event is also to raise awareness in the community overall and make sure people are aware that they're supposed to be have lights at night. And of course, when you leave the event, you notice on the way home how many cyclists don't have any lights on their bike in the dark. So we still have a lot of work to do on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Any other announcements?
I'll just add, Cynthia, you mentioned bike rodeos. We are planning a bike rodeo at the market at the square on October 17th. So.
Do you need volunteers still?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, volunteers are needed. Okay, good. Any other announcements? Okay, hearing none. Future topics, the one we've got listed here is in addition to Bradley Avenue, the update of the bike master plan. Craig had sent me some emails and kind of kept me in the loop. It got delayed by some other projects and staff turnover and all kinds of things, but it still is happening majorly on the radar and pushing ahead towards getting a draft that would come to the commission here. Are there any other future topics people wanted to just mention that they'd like us to put on future agendas? Cynthia?
In the meeting notes, we had talked about snow removal and having some sort of working group meet or something. I know you've been busy with construction this summer, but I would like to wave my flags again and say I'd like to have more conversation about a volunteer snow removal program.
Okay, great. Maybe we can talk right after the meeting adjourns just about, who might be a good working group or how to move that ahead, kind of based on where we left off last time. Any other future topics people would like to request? Okay.
Yeah, the vice chair.
Yeah, so this is something maybe for people to think about, and you can come talk to me or Craig or Barb right afterwards. But I know that there were a couple cancellations here these last few months in a row. Partly I was traveling for one, and we didn't have enough people to make a quorum. And the question came up of, like, when I'm gone or can't be here, who's the vice chair? And we haven't ever designated one, but who else feels comfortable chairing the commission meetings when I'm unavailable? So if anybody's interested in that and feels like they could, step in to chair these meetings, so that process could move forward, come let me know if you're interested. Let Craig or Barb know, because we're definitely looking for someone. It would be nice to kind of pick that person, know who it is, because last time we had a few days' notice and we were just started calling around on the phone, like, well, who might want to do it and who can we reach quick enough? And in the end, we didn't have a quorum and it didn't happen. But it'd be nice to know in advance sort of what the game plan is, and it's something that any commission member here who feels comfortable is welcome to step up and say, hey, I'd be glad to be the chair when that's needed. So let me know. And we'll put that on a future agenda so we could then make it official. Any other future topics?
Not future topics, but I did just remember we should announce that the rail trail, Kickapoo Rail Trail ride is this coming Saturday, and you can still register.
Okay.
And it's a fundraiser for the matching money we need to complete the project. So if you Google Kickapoo Rail Trail,
.org. Okay.
There you go.
KickapooRailTrail.org. You can find details and still
That's
register
right.
for Saturday.
That's right.
Okay, Friday at noon is the deadline to register. So. Oh, and there's on-site registration Saturday at the event. Okay. Okay, fair enough. Good. Well, that's this Saturday. Any others? Okay, then with that, thank you all. I think we're adjourned, and I appreciate it. Good night.